From infrastructure to healthcare, those are some of the issues that are concerning Chris Cox. That's why the founder for Bikers for Trump is running for the 1st Congressional District. I sit down exclusively with Chris for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel, listen to my iHeartRadio podcast, and of course, download my free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Chris Cox, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. How are you doing today?
Great, yourself?
Good, pleased to be here.
Likewise. Obviously, you are a candidate for 1st Congressional District here in Charleston. You also are the founder of Bikers for Trump.
Yes, sir.
And you're an entrepreneur.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, it's just the next step in trying to serve my country and serve the president. And I think we need some good conservative leadership to get back up under the helm here in the Lowcountry. And I'm going to do my best to put myself there so I can use some of the relationships I've gained over the last 4 years, not only from the White House and the Oval Office, but I've had a lot to do with a lot of midterms in 2018. I was able to help push Kevin Cramer over the finish line, and that's up in North Dakota.
Right.
Worked diligently for Josh Hawley in Missouri, and we spent a lot of time in Florida with not only with Rick Scott, new senator, but the new governor, Ron DeSantis.
Right.
We had our hands in Ohio and Florida. They didn't go as well as we wanted, but we're going up against big money. So we want to continue to identify. If we don't harness this MAGA movement right now and the energy from it, we've got to be good stewards of it and make sure that we got the right leadership in place after this next election.
Where's that MAGA energy here in the 1st Congressional District?
Well, it's got plenty of it. As you probably know, the president carried this area by 13 points.
Right.
And so Joe Cunningham, he snuck in there. He was promising he was going to put district over party, and he's voted with Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi close to 90% of the time. And I don't think that anybody in the Lowcountry is going to see any of those presidential candidates and that Democratic circus as the leadership pushing the Lowcountry or the rest of the nation through.
Dude, and I hope to get Joe Cunningham on Quintin's Close-Up soon. But you also said this on your website, quote, "Currently, we in the 1st Congressional District don't have a seat at the table or even in the room where real decisions are being made." When it comes to the 1st Congressional District, what real decisions are being made that we don't know about?
Well, I'll give you a good example. We don't have the proper amount of funds coming from Washington. If we don't invest in our infrastructure with these crumbling bridges and these decaying roads and this flooding, we're not going to continue to attract companies like Boeing, BMW, Mercedes. And so we've got to invest. And the only way to do that is to leverage that money in Washington and bring back. And with my connections that I've made, not only in the Oval Office, but across the rest of the country, I'll be able to get that money in. The first thing I'll look for when I get to Congress is to land a seat on the infrastructure and the transportation committee. And from there, that's where I'll start working to bring that money back here.
How much money are we talking for the 1st Congressional District?
We need a lot of money. I haven't put my finger on exactly how much money. That remains to be seen. See, in order to tackle a lot of these problems, we've got to address something called federalism.
Okay.
That's when the national, for those of you who don't know listening, that's when the national government works with the state and the local governments. They hold hands. So we've got to get our eyes. Let me give you an idea with the flooding. Okay, they're doing this thing called fill and build all around the Lowcountry. They're filling this land and they're building houses, and that's just diverting the water. That's causing a bigger problem. So if you cut down a mature oak tree can suck up to 500 gallons of water a day out of the ground. So when you think about some of these roads that they're widening, they're cutting all those oak trees down. Those oak trees are what's helping keep the water from pouring into people's yards and into the street, more importantly. Imagine, if you will, if your child or your grandparents need to get to the hospital and you're trying to get them there, but you've got a flooded road. It's going to be a big problem. So, we need some people to get in here. We need these studies done, and we got to be able to work together with these different branches of government to pull this thing together. My job as a congressman will be able to leveraging that money from Washington and bringing it back to the Lowcountry.
What studies are you looking at right now?
Well, there's a lot of studies are done, but see, in order wrapping my head around this district, I've been in this since July 10th.
Right.
So for me to slow down and wrap my head around each and every study is really not the direction I need to take at this point. As you come out the gate and as a congressional candidate, there are a lot of things that you have to do to get yourself in a position to run. Unfortunately, a lot of that comes down to fundraising. Henry McMaster said, our governor said during his last race, he came out and I was at a fundraiser and he said, there's two kinds of politicians, those who ask for money and losers. And right now, my focus is on competing with the finances. So I'm the only person in this race that's not a politician. So I don't have that base to pull from. Some of the other opponents are in a position to self-fund their campaigns. And keep in mind, a lot of people that self-fund their campaigns, say they put $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in there, it looks good on paper. But as they start raising money from the community, the state, and around the country, they often pay themselves back. So the optics there aren't always as they seem. So, you can only imagine that as a Lowcountry artist and a political activist, my contacts aren't as deep as, say, someone who is an attorney, a big businessman, or a doctor. Their contacts are a little different. So I'm very proud of what I've been able to raise right now. We're pushing the $100,000 mark, and I'm an unconventional candidate, and I'm going about this in an unconventional way. I'm taking it to the people. I've left behind one of the biggest, most successful grassroots movements in the country that works with Donald Trump's campaign on a weekly basis. Last week, I think they threw 5 rallies across the country. Now, when I set that up, I had a PAC attached to it, Bikers for the President. So because of the relationship of a PAC and a candidate, I've had to step away for obvious reasons. Now, that being said, I'm still very proud of that. I left behind a battle plan, and I left behind a voter registration platform that is one of the top in the country. So of the over 100,000 bikers that we have, I could put my finger on it any time. They have this voter registration platform on their phone and on their iPad. So when they go to these bike rallies and they go to these patriotic rallies, they can pull it out and someone can push a button and they can check their registration first and foremost in every state. And then if it's not up to date, we can update it for them. Now, some states don't allow you to do it online. And in that event, then we can have a voter registration application sent to them.
Okay.
So, we are on the cutting edge of political activism. So I hope to recreate that same grassroots movement here in the Lowcountry. And unlike a lot of my opponents and a lot of people, I don't have to reinvent the wheel because I have a proven track record. I've already done it. I created new primary voters in the presidential election and in the general election. And the president's told me personally himself in the Oval Office. Not to mention, I have a project right now where I'm getting ready to deliver the Amish and the Mennonite.
Right, you told me that last night.
They've been underneath the Republicans and the Democrats' nose since our forefathers were here, and they've been disengaged from politics. But when I went in there and started talking to them, I didn't talk to them like a politician. And so I'm going to be in an Amish wedding in Ohio on the 4th.
Right.
And then I'm going to spend a week or two there in Ohio to bring all of them together so that the next time the president is in Cleveland, Ohio, I'm going to have busloads of them coming up, and they're going to give their support to the president for the first time in history. And that's just one example of my ability to reach out, similar to an ambassador, and bring people together, like-minded people that come together, that see the value of voting, in many cases, for the very first time.
The first time. You talked about earlier about your campaign and how it began from July 10th to right now. What is that biggest difference? Because as you just mentioned, you're not a politician.
Well, the biggest difference here is that, I don't have a voting record to stand on, but I have a political activism record to stand on. The biggest difference here is that I'm a small businessman, I'm an artist, and I don't have that big base to draw from for the money. That being said, I've received almost 800 small donations from across the country, and no other congressional candidate in the country can claim that. That's a grassroots movement like no other. Yesterday online, I received several donations, and I had some $500 donations, some $250, but the ones that kind of really just make me take pause, I had 3 for $5. Okay, so if somebody's going to slow down to send you $5, that's a lot of money to them. okay? These are people that don't want to sit on the sideline. They want to do their part. And yesterday, I even received a $2 donation, and I haven't yet reached out to the man, but he is certainly, by looking at his name, he is either a Mexican or a Latino American. And so I couldn't be more proud of these people that don't and can't afford and traditionally donate to campaigns, but see the value of my leadership and are donating for the first time.
You also said this on your website, quote, grandstanding and false promises won't bring the 1st District the resources it needs from Washington. Tell me, what promises has the current congressman basically said to the constituents of this district?
Well, all right, he said he was going to put district over party. Okay, he's voted with the Democratic leadership 90% of the time. How is that putting district over party? Okay, it's not. He polarized an issue of offshore drilling. The chances of offshore drilling off the coast of South Carolina is about the same chances of my whiskers falling out of my face right now while we're talking. Plus, I've done my own research. And so I've got a way to push back against offshore drilling. But still, we have to remember that because of President Trump's policies, we are now the #1 producer of them, okay? But if we look at that, we got a fault line that's going through Charleston, off Somerville and off the coast. So in my research, I've identified that in Oklahoma in 2014, they had twice as many earthquakes as they did in California. The conventional wisdom there is it's because of fracking and drilling. So if that's the case, and we are this close to a fault line, South Carolina coastline should be exempt from drilling because we can't tamper with something so fragile that could cause catastrophic damages. But we got to keep in mind, too, that we are now energy independent from the world for the first time in many, many years. And we need to maintain that, and we need to push that. Not to mention that the Lowcountry is a jewel on not only the East Coast, but the world. People come here from all around the world for our culinary, to get married, for our pristine beaches, for the kindness of the people that live here. And so we're already pulling our part here on the coast of South Carolina, and we don't need to invoke any insecurities on our residents that live here as a result of offshore drilling. And I believe after my research, there's about enough oil out there to drill for about 5 days, if that. I don't see that as an issue. We won't be polarizing that. And I'm going to be talking about things like infrastructure. We're talking about things like I'm pro-life, and I will defend the principles of these radical policies coming out by the Democrats that want to abort a baby up until the day it's born. If you come in and you want to abort your baby at 8.5 months, to me that is murder, and I will fight with my last breath for these children that are being ripped out of these stomachs, and it's just unacceptable. I want to address things like school safety. We've already had a mass shooting in this city, and it happened at the AME church. And we can't say enough about how they handled that, and they exemplified forgiveness. They didn't polarize the city or the state. They weren't going out and disrupting things. And when people like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson came in town, they asked them to leave because they didn't want people coming here grandstanding, trying to make this about them. They wanted to be with their families. They wanted to put it behind them. And we just couldn't be more proud of the community.
Why was offshore drilling an issue last year?
It was polarized. It's really not an issue. I think there were some testings done in the 80s. There's no oil out there to drill. That was used to polarize the district, and it worked. But that's not going to work this time because we know there's no oil out there. It's not going to happen. We need to talk about things that are happening. We need to talk about things like the Second Amendment. Again, we need to get back to school safety. So where I was at with the school safety, my friend Andy Pollack had a bill passed as a result of his daughter being killed in Parkland. Now, there are things in that bill I like, and there's some things in that bill I don't like. But there are a lot of things I do like. My idea is that we are building state-of-the-art schools all over the Lowcountry. Why don't we put a little police substation in the school? It wouldn't cost that much more money. We would have officers already on site. We would have a holding cell, because another thing that I want to address is the opioid abuse. We have children that are dropping dead across the Lowcountry because they're going into their friends' parents' medicine cabinets and they're getting addicted to things like Oxycontin and Percocet, and it's unacceptable. And we've got to start holding not only this community to it, but we've got to reach out and have some penalties for some of these pharmaceutical companies that have been overprescribing these things. We've got to fortify our boundaries. All right. When Donald Trump talks about building, well, I just left Israel. Right. Israel has a big wall going across that West Bank area there. Yeah. And it has cut their acts of terrorism by 95%. I believe the wall works. I've been to the Rio Grande. I've seen personally, and I've uncovered evidence of these illegal immigrants coming across the Rio Grande. I've filmed it and done live videos and shown these big areas where they come across, they take their wet clothes off, they put their dry, and leave them on the ground, they put their dry clothes on, there's diapers. These women are carrying little babies over there. So it is a big problem. And I threw a rally in San Antonio, and I only had a couple bikers at this rally because I used Mexican Americans, and I had hundreds of them show up, and they want people to come across with the proper channels. They want them to come over to the United States the same way that they did. They don't want drugs coming in here. They don't want the coyotes bringing human trafficking and prostitution. And from what I could tell, and the months I spent on the Rio Grande and around in southern Texas, they want the wall built as much as people in, say, Ohio or Florida or Virginia and certainly South Carolina.
If this when this wall is to be built as the president wants it to be, how will it help the 1st Congressional District in your mind?
Well, when we talk about these opioids, a lot of them are coming in across that Rio Grande. They're laced with a thing called fentanyl, and it's killing people. Okay, we've got to. We had illegal immigrants last year I can't remember the number. I read it the other day. I want to say billions of dollars, but they're getting this money, they're sending it back to their countries. We need people that come to this country. Back in the day, if you came into America, you had to have a trade. You could build a violin. You were an architect. You were a bricklayer. You were a doctor. You were an engineer. We need to get back to, and we have to have, we certainly want to have immigration, and we want people coming over here, but we want them coming over here for the right reason. If we look at the Syrian refugees that are coming to our country, they're coming here and they're starting off around $2,400 a month is what I understand. Okay, if we look at a veteran that served his country, that's been in 2 wars, that's got a respirator, he's suffering from Agent Orange, he has PTSD, he may be missing a limb, that veteran's getting about $1,200 a month. Who did that math? I'll tell you who did that math. The Democrats did that math. It's not fair. We've got to get back to putting our American citizens first, and then we have to find a program where we can entice people to come over to the land of opportunity, but not at the expense of American citizens. We have to protect our veterans. We have to fortify our schools. We have to reform asylum. We have to tackle this opioid abuse problem. We've got to work on our infrastructure if we're going to continue to grow and be the #1 city in the world. And there's a long list of other things we need to do.
You talked earlier about money. Let me talk to you about one of the issues you also want to focus on, reeling in wasteful spending and cutting taxes. You said this quote, President Trump and the Republican Congress brought nearly all Americans tax reform that gave them reductions in their tax bill or bonuses from their employers. While it was a historic accomplishment, there's more than Congress can do. And as a representative for the Lowcountry, I'll fight to further cut taxes for the middle-class families. What cut taxes are you looking at right now?
All right. There is so much wasteful spending that's coming out of Washington. Again, we look at back to that immigration problem. How could we justify giving some of these illegal immigrants more money than we give our veterans that come in? We've got to be able to tackle. We got to look at Social Security. Social Security is a dinosaur now that is on the brink of bankruptcy. We've got to figure out how to save that thing. We are now, as a result of Donald Trump's policies, we're not giving countries that hate us billions of dollars. You know, you look at what President Obama sent $1.7 billion or dollars to Iran, Iraq. I mean, it's really unexcusable. We can't pay countries to hate us. We got to help countries that like us. We got to help countries like Israel. The aid that we give Israel is not charity. It's an investment. It's an investment that saves American lives. It's an investment that saves us billions of dollars in research and development. The Israelis are right now on the brink of some cancer, some cures and medication that are going to curb and help people recover from cancer. The technology that comes out of that country is unbelievable. And now we've got members of Congress on the Democratic side, the Jihad Squad, that are sitting there calling for boycotts against Israel. Alexander Haig, which was Ronald Reagan's. He was in the head of the State Department, I believe. But anyway, he said that Israel is the biggest battleship in the world that can't be sunk. It doesn't take one American soldier to operate, and it sits in a region critical to American national security. So if you don't see the biblical narrative to stand by Israel, because the Lord said that Israel is the apple of his eye, and if you're not religious, then you can see the common sense approach to supporting Israel from those words I just said from Alexander Haig, because it sits in a region critical to American national security. So we're already starting to cut a lot of the spending by not giving countries money that hate us. Donald Trump is working on those tariffs right now that are hurting some small businesses right now, but this is an attempt to give Americans a level playing field, because we've been overpaying China for far too long. And now, as a result of those policies, I think we have 8 big steel mills in America that are being built right now so that we can get back to using American steel. And American steel is much stronger and much more durable than the steel that comes out of other parts of the world. And so my thing is I'm here to represent the common man, because I'm a common man. I want to give those people, like the president saw the value of giving people a voice that has sometimes been left behind. The Lowcountry is 60% blue collar, 40% white collar. I'm going to get in here and I'm going to get the attention of these blue collar guys. And we're going to come together and we're going to get rid of Joe Cunningham. We're going to be supporting our military. We're going to be supporting first responders. We're going to be giving the law enforcement the tools that they need. We need to start holding people accountable. I hate to bounce around a lot, but we're on a schedule here. We look at some of these policies like it happened in Florida. That kid, Dylan Cruz, that guy Cruz, he had been talking about shooting up that school for a long time. He had threatened to do a lot of things. He should have had a record. But because of a lot of the policies there and these liberal schools, they don't want to give these kids a record that are going to have to carry for the rest of their lives. And then a lot of the times when they don't hold these kids accountable for their threats and for carrying knives to school and for punching teachers in the face, then they're going to come out, we're going to have another school shooting. I don't want to see one here in the Lowcountry any more than you do or anybody that's watching in your audience. And so that's why we've got to get behind some of these things and make it happen.
What in your mind has Congressman Joe Cunningham done good?
I can't think of a lot of things he did good. Now, I will think that I can point out some grandstanding. Joe Cunningham voted against the minimum wage hike, but I feel like he had to get permission from Nancy Pelosi to do that, because I've uncovered in his speeches where he's been talking about wanting to increase that as high as possible. He said, quote, "I want to see people make the maximum amount of money they can." So when you go and you raise the minimum wage like that and you go too high, then you're going to lose jobs. These people that are working at Walmart and these people that are working at, say, let's use McDonald's as an example. Now, instead of going in and talking to a person across the counter and giving your order, you're typing it into a kiosk, because they don't want to pay that. They're going to save more money by having a computer screen there that you can type your order into than they are if they can continue to pay their employees. I've taken a really close look at the food and beverage industry. It's one of the biggest in the Lowcountry and even the state of South Carolina. They're not getting a fair shake. So if you look at the minimum wage and here for food and beverage, these waiters don't want to make $15 an hour because then they're going to lose their tips. They'd rather make $100, $200, $300 a shift. So in many cases, that's going to hurt them. And we need to figure out how we can give the food and beverage some kind of insurance, some clinics or something. There's so many of them. They play such a big role in the Lowcountry. I'd really like to figure out what we can do. And so I've been talking to people like Diane Crawley that owns Red's Ice House.
Right.
I've been talking to people like Eli
Right.
Hyman on in his business. I've talked to people like Steve Carroll.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm taking their advice and I'm trying to put together a program that will help that food and beverage industry because they're vital to the Lowcountry. We've got to have them, and I need to know what their wants, needs, and concerns are. So moving forward, we can figure out a program, and serving on the federal level. This will affect more than just the Lowcountry. We look at, in New York City and in San Francisco, other cities that have a big population of the food and beverage. And we're talking about the back of the house. We're talking about the front of the house. And we just need to come up. Again, I want to represent the people who are in many cases been left behind and don't feel like they have a voice.
When you talk about those clinics, I believe, how much money are you talking there?
Well, that remains to be seen. Does it necessarily have to be federal funds, or are we going to be in a position to maybe give a tax break to certain food and beverage industry, like for instance the liquor companies? They're taxed more than anything in food and beverage. They're taxed up and beyond. So if we can figure out how to maybe give a tax break to them, and then they come in and they put some clinics up where food and beverage employees can go to, and they can, get a checkup. They can be seen by a RN. They can have a sprained arm or foot set. They can talk to them from a lot of different things. And that leads me to some of the other programs that I've been working on. When I talk about opioid abuse, I've identified these mobile medical units because right now, if you're suffering from opioid abuse, at least up until about 2 years ago when I was researching this for the campaign, not my campaign, I found out that if you were suffering from heroin or pill abuse and you lived in Myrtle Beach or in Hilton Head, you had to come to Charleston, to the brick and mortar building. So I've developed a program that will have medical mobile units that go out into the community that you can go to. And that'll keep that person that's suffering from the opioid abuse, that's on the verge of taking another pill or another shot, from having to drive from all the way to Charleston, to have a mobile unit to go out to them. Okay, that same unit will be used in a program similar to what Nancy Reagan was best known for, Just Say No. So the same unit would go into intermediate and high schools, and it would be a scared straight kind of program. They'd show you pictures of what 12 and 14-year-olds looked like before they got hooked on opioids and what they looked like right before they even kicked the habit and got their life back on track, or what they looked like in many cases right before they died. So these mobile medical units also can be used for veterans. So, and that's a whole different unit. So the veterans will have a medical unit that will go into these rural areas because so many of them are disgruntled because of the VA. And by having these medical units go to them with a doctor on there with a camera similar to yours that's being fed to a doctor at a hospital, and to diagnose them, and then we have somebody make an appointment for them right there on the spot, and then we provide transportation to those veterans to get there. I had similar programs I put together for the Native Americans out in the West because they don't like to go to the hospital, and they've got children running around there that have toothaches. And that one for the Native Americans I designed would be set, they're all set up different because they all have different needs. The one for the Native Americans I designed would have a dialysis center because a lot of them suffer from alcoholism and drug abuse, and it could check them out. It would have a dentist chair there because a lot of these kids have never been to the dentist, and it could pull an aching tooth. So there are a lot of things that we can do. And, I'm going to let your listeners, and I'm going to let the Lowcountry decide what Joe Cunningham has done well and what he hasn't done well, and where he's maybe exceeded and where he's certainly fallen short representing Lowcountry. I want to talk more about what I'm going to do, about my track record of raising the bar and moving the needle, and how I get in there, I can leverage these relationships, and I can make things happen.
I got to talk about some breaking news. Obviously, the transcript has been released about an alleged conversation with the Ukraine president and current United States President Donald Trump, allegedly about Joe Biden. What is this all about?
Well, I was up this morning and it came across the airways. CNN reported breaking news that Donald Trump doesn't want to be impeached. Okay, really? Come on. I feel like the Democratic Party and the mainstream media, they mitigate this political climate through allegation, innuendo, circumstance, and hearsay, and they try to find you guilty in public opinion before you've had your due process. That's got to go. We've got to get back to the basics. Let's wait and wrap our head around this and see exactly what was said. The White House announced that they were going to release the total transcript without any redactions. Okay, so that means that we're going to have our head wrapped around it. So for us to speculate what was said and what wasn't said really remains to be seen. And I think that our due diligence would serve us well to wait and see what happens. They've been trying, that's another reason that I think I'll be the most successful of the people in my race in Washington, because I'm not a politician. I won't get caught up in distractions like this, like collusion. Look at how much time and money was spent on trying to prove Russian collusion. And they had to come out and say there was none. So the American people, and to me, what's happening right now is going to help Donald Trump win, because they can't stop talking about impeachment. Not only the Lowcountry, but the rest of the country. They want to see their congressmen go to Washington and serve their district, not get caught up in all this BS that typically 9 out of 10 times comes out to be nothing. And that's where I'll serve the Lowcountry, because I won't get distracted. I'll roll my sleeves up, I'll get in there, and I'll do what's best. And for anybody out there that sees my relationship with the president as a weakness, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm nobody's robot and I am nobody's meat puppet. I will do what's best for the Lowcountry, because I'm not going to Washington to become rich or famous. I'm going there to make a difference for the Lowcountry. And I'm going to work and strive every day to do that, because I want my legacy to be that I was a trusted friend and family member of the Lowcountry. And I will not ever deviate from that, and I will stand on principle, and I will do what's best for the Lowcountry, not what's best for the administration, not what's best for Lindsey Graham or for Henry McMaster, although I look forward to working with people like that because I'm friends with both of them. But I will do what's best for the Lowcountry, and I want to represent everybody, not only the blue collar. I want to represent the Black community. I want to represent the immigrants that are here legally. I want to represent the food and beverage. I want to represent the police officers and the military. I want to stand firmly with the veterans of this country and see that they have the resources they need to have a comfortable life.
Chris Cox, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. I'm very flattered to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris Cox, 2020.com if you want to hear more about what I'm doing. And I certainly appreciate, I'm not looking for pats on the back. If you have any constructive criticism, I'm all ears. In order for me to represent you, I need to know what is on your mind, what you want to see done differently, and your opinion on how we're going to do that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.